Good afternoon, Andy.
Good afternoon, Simon.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. How you doing?
I'm just checking all the technology work. So I've got some question and answers on the screen in front of me, and then over here on the right is the Facebook live feed, which has just kicked in. So that's all working now as well. Um, Welcome to everybody that's joined us. My name's Simon Chaplin, for those of you that don't know me, and I run a group called the Accountants Mastermind, which helps inspire, challenge accountants and their teams to be the best they want to be. And today I'm joined by Andy Lopata, who talks about professional relationships, which I've been educated on this morning around the language that I use. So today we're going to talk about professional relationships. Now, Andy is the speaker that is going to come along to the full mastermind group on the 25th of March in order to help inspire, challenge, and support us around our networking and referral marketing and how to build professional relationships. So, Andy, before we get into the questions that lots of people have sent through, if anybody's got any questions or want us to expand, obviously just ask the questions in the various places and I'll make sure that happens. But before we get to those questions, Andy, can you just give us your credibility? Why are you sat here? Why are you an expert in this field? Why should we listen to you, Andy?
Well, I always think that's probably more for other people to say than for me. But as you've asked me, I've been involved in the field of networking and professional relationships for it's my 21st year now. I spent 8 years running one of the largest professional networks in the UK, Business Referral Exchange. Um, Sold that to our business partner back in 2007. And since then, I've been working with a range of businesses on their referral strategies and their professional relationship strategies. Been working with a range of industries, a lot, but I'd say about 50% of my work is financial services, a lot of that with accountancy firms of all sizes, right the way up to some of the top six. And I've written 3 books on the topic. The fourth book is in the process at the moment. So I've been around the block a little bit, hence the a few creases here and there.
That's brilliant. I've just noticed. I hadn't noticed before. The cards on the back of the wall. What's the card? What's the cards about?
They're thank you cards.
Oh,
I one of the points I always make is that people rush to send Christmas cards, and I always think back to my last business where our business partner would go on holiday just before the Christmas period, just as the cards started coming in, and all the Christmas cards would go on his desk, and I'd be the only one to look at them. And then a couple of days before he came back, they'd all come down and no one had looked at them. Thank you cards stay around a lot longer. They get read more, and I know I appreciate them. I'm not going to throw them away, and so they end up on my wall and on my bookshelves and so on instead.
well, fantastic. I've got. Funny, I don't throw mine away. I've got a pile upstairs, but that might be an action for me. A take off
But
the
do
back of
what
this.
I did. Get your niece, who's very
I'll have to do
artistic,
that. Is that?
to start stringing them up.
So what a brilliant idea. Just briefly, Andy, when you join us on the 25th of March, what sort of things are you going to be talking about? What's the
well,
the objective of the session?
Well, the goal is going to be looking at professional relationships from a strategic perspective. If you look at most of the challenges that face accounting firms these days and leaders of accounting firms, professional relationships underpin all of them. Whether it's business growth, whether it's managing change, if it's sort of working out what you're going to do with coronavirus, which is the big issue now, a lot of the solutions that can be provided by other people. But you need to have the relationships in place with those people for them to want to help you. You need to know that you've got the right people in place in the first place. So I look at building, nurturing, and leveraging professional relationships. So making sure you know the right people, that the relationship is strong enough, and that they're in a position to support you. We're going to be focusing mainly on the first two,
Okay.
making sure your networks are in the right place and the relationships are deep enough so that whatever support you will need, and I imagine for most people on the day, the primary focus will be business growth, referrals, but whatever that outcome is, that you've got the right things in place so that you can ask.
Okay. So in particular, that second part is about making the relationships deeper. So as opposed to being all things to all people. I was trying to try not to use a sexual analogy there. That's what was. That's where the brain was going. But anyway, brilliant. I'm really looking forward to that. So, questions that we've got from the people that have come along to listen to us today. The first one is from Sherry. How to make a start when the practice is new and doesn't have many existing clients to refer me. So if I've got a business that's just started and I've not got anybody to make any recommendations, what's the first thing I should be doing, Andy?
So, a common problem, and the common solution, which is the wrong one, is to be desperate, and to see networking events, to use that example, as a pool of prospective clients, and to go in and start hunting. I need business. I need business. If you need business urgently, then networking referral strategies is not the first port of call. There are other approaches to generating quick business. This is a long-term strategy. Having said that, so there's two things you need to do. Going back to what we were just saying, you need to build the network. So you need to recognize where you're lacking the right relationships and develop strong relationships there. So the obvious places that spring to mind will be local networking groups if you don't have a network already. And it will also be what I call the holy quadruplicate, which we'll explore on the workshop a little bit more. But I call the classic referral circle of accountants, solicitors, financial advisors, and bank managers the holy quadruplicate.
Okay.
But building strong relationships with those people. But going back to my main point, if you just go and knock on the local solicitor's door and say, "Hi, I'm new here, I don't know anyone, will you refer me?" That's not going to have any longevity, and you're not going to get quality referrals. So you still have to invest in that relationship. So in the short term, as far as relationship strategies can help you, you turn to your existing relationships. So your friends and family. Now, we British are terrible at this. Now, I work all over the world. And when I go to some other countries, Italy being a classic example, but not the only one, and I explain to them how reticent the British are to turn to their family and their friends for support, they laugh. They're baffled. In Italy, in Milan, they actually said to me, in Italy, the family is the business. I'm not quite sure what they meant by that.
Oh, of course,
But,
yes.
but it's a totally different mindset. Now, I recognise there are going to be people on the Facebook Live who are thinking, "Ah, God, I'm not going there." I keep business and personal separate, and I respect that. But I think the challenge that you have there is that you're being too broad brush in your approach. There are people in your personal network who never want to talk about business with you. Equally, there are people in your personal network who would love to support you, and actually you might find you've got more in common with them if you
Mm.
talk business than anything else. There are people in your professional network who only want to focus on the transactional relationship you have and don't want to go beyond that. There are those that want to be friends. So treat everyone individually. But my advice on that question is go out and start talking to people you already know,
Mm.
even if they're not directly related to your business, because they will know people.
Yeah, so I've got don't from the point of view of don't have that as your first port of call.
Mm.
Start building your network and build it locally, and most importantly, leverage the network that you've already got there, namely your friends, your friends and family.
Former colleagues as well, there's a range, unless you've moved location and you're starting completely afresh. And then I would turn to my existing network and say, who do you know who lives here?
Hmm. Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you. Next question is from Claire. And this is one that comes up a lot. How do you ask for a referral?
Politely. Uh,
Please.
and so was that from Claire?
That was from Claire. Yeah.
Claire. So my top piece of advice about asking for referrals is be specific.
Okay.
Your job is to make it as easy as possible for people to refer you. What most people will do is they'll be really generic. And the analogy I use is a painting. What you need to be doing is painting a portrait, because you need the person, your champion, your advocate, the person who's referring you, you need them to see in their mind's eye an image of the person they can talk to. As soon as they see that image of one person in their mind's eye, then they're ready to help you. What most people do is paint a crowd scene where you can't make out any individual features. They'll say, look, if you know anyone who needs my services, do you know anyone who needs an accountant? Anyone will get you no one. So my number one piece of advice there is be really specific. Ask individually, not as groups. If you think about sponsorship, how we used to collect sponsorship and how we do it now, we used to ask for sponsorship by going up to individuals with a sheet of paper, a pen, and a brown envelope and say, "Will you sponsor me to do this?" And they were asked directly, and they would have to say yes or no. Now, what do? We set up a Just Giving page.
Yeah.
We send a link on Facebook and LinkedIn and by email, and anyone can miss it. So ask people individually. And if you're asking individually, you've got a better idea of who they know, so you can be more specific. So, Simon, I want to do more work with accountants. And particularly, I'm looking for accountants in this town of this size, because I know you know a lot of accountants, so I'm going to filter it down for you. Whereas if I turn around to someone else in my network, I might pick another client base that I work with, because I know that they've got their networks there. So you ask different questions of different people.
And are you comfortable being as direct as that? Because I'm picking up on it because I know lots of people that I work with aren't comfortable asking full stop, end of story. Other people say that they do, but what it actually turns out to be is at the end of a meeting, as they're kind of walking out of the office, they'll say something like, if you know anybody that wants to work for us, or we're looking for more work at the moment. I don't suppose you do. And sort of, it's almost an embarrassed thing. Do you find that? Is that just accountants, or is that people in
No,
general?
that's actually the more aggressive, confident form of that has been taught in sales courses for years, and it's appalling. And it's
Okay.
known as the Columbo close. Just
The
one more thing.
Columbo close. Oh,
Columbo close.
okay. Okay.
Just one more thing. And what you're doing then is you're tapping the referral request on top of everything else you've talked about, and it tends to be very vague. Going back to the previous part of the answer to Claire's question. Um, to make it easier for you to ask if confidence is a factor, do this. Think of the people who can be your champions and score them. I've got 3 scores. There's one I'm going to focus on, but just to sort of fill the blanks. The 3 scores are their willingness to refer, their understanding of what you do, in other words, their ability to refer, and their opportunity to refer. So are they talking to the right people?
Okay.
I want to focus on the willingness to refer. So let's say you're really nervous about asking someone for a referral. Visualize the conversation with them where you ask for the referral, and particularly in where you ask in a way that makes it easy for them. So I'm looking to work with this company. I know you've got contacts there. This is what we can do for them. I think it could really benefit them. How do you feel about helping me? Now, I want you to visualize being them in that situation. How do they feel? And try and get a gut feeling for, are they thinking, how can I get out of this as quickly as possible?
Yeah,
Or I would love,
scared,
yeah,
frightened. Yeah.
and score them out of 10 based on that. I did this with a client of mine a number of years ago. He had a lot of nerves around asking people, and he listed 10 people. And for each of them, he scored them out of 10. And he just went down the list and he went 9, 9, 10, 9, 8, 9, 10. And I said, "How do you feel now?" He went, "No, I'm fine." And he went and he got a bundle of business. So it's about understanding that people in our network want to help us. They get joy and pleasure from helping us. And if we don't ask them, we're denying them that joy and pleasure. As long as the relationship is deep enough and strong enough, and as long as we ask them in a way that makes it easy for them to help us and it makes sense to them.
Okay. So, and this is sort of leads into a question from Lisa about the best time. I kind of got the impression there from the Columbo close that uh, should it be a separate meeting, or should it be during the course of the meeting, or at the beginning of the meeting? When during that do you ask
Separately. Ideally
separately?
separately. And it's a very simple reason why. If we work together for an hour, and there's so many reasons for this, I'm going to pick just one. If we're working together for an hour, you've got a lot of takeaways, a lot to remember. And then if I add a referral request in there, then that's something else and it can get dropped. Now imagine we work together for an hour, and we've had a call this morning, and we've got this now, so we'll have talked for over an hour today.
Mm.
So you can imagine if I dropped a referral request at any point in this, with everything else we've talked about, that's easily lost in amongst the mass. If I phoned you on Friday or on Monday and said, "Simon, following our conversation the other day, you mentioned that you knew so and so. I've been thinking about their challenge. I think I might be able to help them, or I've actually been looking for a lead into there. Does that make sense to you? Would you be able to help me? That call has one agenda and one agenda only. So you can't forget it. It doesn't get lost. So there are other reasons as well, but that would be my main one.
So separate the question, the referral request, from the work that you're delivering.
Yeah.
Gives the listener, the receiver, the person that you're asking, the ability to focus on one thing. Okay, that makes really simple common sense to me. Now you put it like that. Another question. So when do you? So you've just in that script you reference the meeting that you'd had last week. So generally speaking, from an accountancy point of view, for most of our customers, we might meet them once or twice a year around a set of accounts, basically. So we'll prepare the accounts and then we'll have a meeting. Do you do the call? Do you do the referral request after the accounts meeting, or do you make
Not
it a reasonably
necessarily. I think it depends on the quality of your relationship. In the scenario I just shared, it's after we've spoken for over an hour on Zoom. But that might not always be the case. So at the moment, I'm focused on being more proactive than I've been for years on targeting keynote talks at conferences. It's something I love and I'm good at, but it's never been a primary focus. Now I'm putting it up there as one of my main revenue streams for the next 2-3 years going forward. So I'm researching the conferences that I might want to speak at, and then looking to see who the organizers are. I'm then going to LinkedIn and also using my general knowledge to work out who I know who might know them. And then I'm reaching out to that person if my relationship is strong enough. So I might be reaching out to someone I haven't spoken to for 6 months or 3 years. If the relationship's deep enough, it can be a period of time. So it doesn't have to be on the back of an interaction. In many cases, it's better if it's not. Because if it feels too tagged on, it feels like the Columbo close.
Yeah, so it's almost I've done a good job, give me a referral type
Yeah.
scenario.
Yeah.
So Howard, and I'm focusing on this and want to drill down into this a
Yeah,
bit,
good.
Andy, because it's one of the biggest challenges that comes up. So if it was, say, 6 months after, or even 3 months after you last spoke to somebody, how would you then, what script would you use? How would you tee that up?
I'd have a conversation. I'd be a human being. Uh, I don't write scripts for these things. I mean, I think that we're talking about people that you have a strong relationship with. You've
Right.
scored
Oh,
them
right.
into an
Okay. Yeah.
authority. If you've scored them lower, the first thing I would do is find a different route. See if there's someone else I know who's got a better link. If the relationship is lower, I would acknowledge that, and I would say, look, I've done this research. I found you're a connection. I know it might not be a fit, but how would you feel about referring me? But that's how I might say it. But I'm wary of the term scripts because I think I used to be in sales in my 20s, and you were given a script to read to cold call, and I always ditched the script because you sounded scripted. Now I have used some loose scripts for some stuff recently because there's certain points I need to nail. But for a human to human conversation of that kind, probably be less scripted. Now, having said that, that's me, and I'm pretty confident asking for referrals. If you're struggling with that, it doesn't do any harm to just go through a few scenarios with someone and jot down some bullet points. This is the order of what I want to cover and the key points I want to get across and ask. But keep it relatively loose and short.
Okay. And come from a place of integrity, I think, is my,
Totally.
my
Yeah.
so be honest, be brave, but come from a place of authenticity and integrity, um, and therefore connection, I suppose, is what is the word that I'm
And just to
searching for.
pick up on that, a lot of people don't ask for referrals. And it might be worth covering this because it sort of really feeds into what you're asking me. We don't ask for referrals for 3 reasons. We don't ask for referrals because we don't want to be a burden to other people. And
Mm.
I've covered that because I talked about actually other people get pleasure from helping us and we're denying them that pleasure as long as the relationship is strong enough and we make it easy for them. We don't ask people because we assume they won't help us or won't want to help us. We'll grow a thick skin and allow them to say no and recognize that if they say no, it might not be about you. It could be they don't feel they have a strong enough rapport with that person you want to be referred to. It could be a host of reasons. So just accept that. But if you don't ask, you're definitely not going to get
No,
it.
gonna-
So ask. But the third one, and the reason I said this, is we don't ask because we don't want to look weak and vulnerable. And that's a big one for people. And part of the answer of that is how you position it. So if you turn around and say, my practice is really struggling. We've just lost 6 big clients because we got everything wrong and their audits were a disaster. So if we don't replace them quickly, we're going to go bankrupt. We're going to lay off staff. Who can you refer me to? It's pretty vulnerable. But if you turn around and you say, we've had a lot of success with companies in a certain sector, and we're finding we're really starting to understand that sector, and our approach seems to resonate with our clients. Now, I know you know a couple of companies based in that sector. They might not be looking to change accountants at the moment, but we're approaching things a different way. How would you feel about making a connection? Could you help us have a conversation? Does that sound weak and vulnerable?
no, not at all.
But having said that, and this is why I wanted to talk about vulnerability, you don't, those are two examples on the extremes, if you like. That's the black and white, but there's shades of grey in between. If you've got a strong enough relationship, you can be vulnerable to a degree. And people respond to that.
Mm.
There's a study in the book I'm writing at the moment. I quote a study from Harvard Business School. I'm not sure if it's been published yet, but they looked at the impact of different types of envy on people wanting to listen or support someone. And put briefly, the various experiments they ran were to see how people responded to someone if they just stood there and said, I'm brilliant, I've achieved everything, and here's what you can learn from me, versus here's what my journey, here's the pitfalls, here's what went wrong, and here's what I've learned from it. And they found that in the first example, where people were just, I'm the big I am, they had a lot of um, malicious envy was the term, malicious envy.
Okay.
So you want that person to fail, you don't want to learn from them, your defenses are up, and so forth. Where people were vulnerable and said, hey, I got things wrong, you have benign envy. And the benign envy was, actually, I get that, and I do want to learn from them, and I want them to succeed. So you're jealous of where they are in a way, but you want to engage with them. So being vulnerable to a degree with the right people actually works, but you've got to do it authentically
Yeah.
with integrity.
Brilliant. That's really interesting. And I'm conscious of the time, and we've spent a big chunk of this conversation on that. But as I said, I think it's important for the people watching. Can I'll move on now. So I've got 2 questions that are reasonably similar that I'll throw at you at the same time. The first one is, what would you recommend as a thank you gift for a successful referral? That was from Sean. And then from Gavin, is it worth having an incentive scheme?
Yeah.
And if you do have an incentive scheme, how do you monitor it? So, and we have to obviously be careful within the profession from a bribery point of view. Yeah, so what do you recommend as a thank you gift, or you got any ideas for a thank you gift? And is it useful to have an incentive scheme?
It's the same answer for both.
Okay.
And that is, you're dealing with the individuals, so you don't have a blanket policy on anything. The problems with incentive schemes, other than the ones that you've just touched on, are that they'll work brilliantly for some people, but they will turn other people completely off. Some people are disincentivized by an incentive scheme because you start to question why they're referring you. I've run an exercise over a number of years in a number of sessions all over the world, different groups. Think of people that you've referred recently. Why did you do it? And I could count on the fingers of one hand the number of times people have said, because they paid me. In fact, probably wouldn't need all my fingers on that hand to do so. So that's the number one place people go to, but it's not the primary motivator for people to refer. Yes, some people, particularly paid intermediaries, formal intermediaries, will be incentivized by money and they won't refer you otherwise. You need to know that. But deal with people on an individual basis and understand what drives them. Most people will refer you. If it's a client, they'll refer you because they're happy, because they like you, because they want you to succeed, or because they want the other, your potential client to benefit from what you offer.
Mm.
Equally, you have to recognize some of your clients won't refer you because they don't like the idea of you having access to all of their
Mm.
confidential personal information, and then also working with someone they know, even if that's actually nuts because of confidentiality, they'll be uncomfortable with it. But it's an individual thing. You need to find that out. If it's an intermediary, some of them will want to be paid. Some of them will want referrals back. So they'll look for a reciprocal relationship. But many, in my experience, are referring the best person for the job because they want the best service for their client. So they want to know they can trust you. And that's far more important to them than anything else. But get to know the individual. So that takes us to the question of the best gift.
Mm.
The best gift is what that individual's interested in. So my favorite example of this is, I'll give you a couple. I wanted to thank someone for a referral that paid off and paid off again. So I'd done some work, and a couple of years later, that client booked me for another year's worth of work. So the person who referred me originally had moved on, but I still wanted to thank her because that re-incentivizes it. And actually, it's just the right thing to do. And a friend of mine had had dinner with her the week before. And I said, what was she talking about? What's she interested in at the moment? And my friend said, well, she was talking about planting trees in her garden. So we got her a tree. She came home and found a tree on the doorstep, not fully grown.
No.
But, that's really personal. A good friend of mine is a speaker and an event MC called Jeremy Nicholas. And we run an annual charity conference in my local area, and Jem has emceed it for 4 years. And 1 year, so we wanted to do a thank you gift for him each time. And actually, for the speakers, we were giving the chocolates from the chocolate shop that Jeremy half owned, so we couldn't exactly give him the same chocolates. So what we did was we got something for him each year, and it's normally on his birthday as well. So 1 year he had got a new Jag, of which he was very proud. So we got him a number plate that said Jaguar Rover only park here. The next year, he's a huge West Ham fan. He used to be the stadium announcer at Upton Park, so some people might even know who I'm talking about now. And I went onto his Facebook. I found a picture of him on the pitch at West Ham. I think it was with Bobby Moore, but it was with one of his heroes, might have been Trevor Brooking. And I had a jigsaw created of it. So it's that type of thing. Personalize it. It doesn't take long.
Yeah, the jigsaw and the photograph on Facebook. That's a really clever. That's a really clever idea. I like that.
I do thank you cards for our speakers. Once we've got the images from the conference, I do a thank you card with their picture on the front of it. I developed a talk on connected leadership, and I interviewed leaders in my network to take my professional relationships talk and adapt it for leaders. And I built their quotes in. So I did thank you cards with their picture and their quote on it. Who's not going to keep a card quoting them and keep that in a prominent place? So personalize it and keep a note of the thank yous you sent, so you don't keep repeating the same ones and they lose their impact.
Impact. Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you. Now just we got, just briefly, if there was one thing, this is a question from Kim, if there was one thing that you should do, which would have the greatest impact the most quickly, what would it be? I know that's a broad question, but if there was only one thing that you could do as a consequence of watching this today, what would it be that you'd go away and do, Andy?
I would go away and I would, if we're talking purely referrals, which seems to be the primary focus of the conversation, I would list my dream referrals, or what I call my referral mix. This is who I want to be introduced to. And then I would go away and I would work out who could introduce me based on 2 lists. One is a list of the people who trust me, like me, and are positioned well enough to refer me. Pick 5 and say, right, who from my dream list can they introduce me to? So I call that champion to prospect. Who can refer me? Who do they know? And my other list is what I call prospect to champion. I look at my list of dream referrals and I say, right, who do I know who knows them?
Okay,
Just
so
do that and you'll get
but
results.
so and I because I have this thing I bang on about, the most wanted. So it's nothing more than it's just basically 10 logos of businesses that we want to work with.
Yeah.
Um,
Type
so
them into
that's
LinkedIn. Type them into LinkedIn. You type the company name into LinkedIn. You click on, it says see the 532 employees on LinkedIn. You click on that. You search for second degree connections and you look for your mutual connections. That's what I'm doing on the conferences. Is my first step. I look at their website. I find out the name of the key decision makers. So for your case, it might be the CEO or the FD. So their names will be on 3 out of 5 websites. And so again, you can just search them by name on LinkedIn and find out if they're a second degree connection. If so, how well do you know the mutual connection? How well are they likely to know them? Pick up the phone and ask.
brilliant. Excellent. Thank you. And you mentioned a minute ago that you'd written 3 books. What was the latest book called that you said that you just published?
Well, no, the one I'm writing at the moment, I'm rewriting and rewriting, is called Just Ask.
Okay.
But that's not going to be out for a while. My last book is called Recommended: How to Sell Through Networking and Referrals. Was published by Financial Times Prentice Hall. But my books are available on Amazon. You're welcome
Brilliant.
to have a look and search.
So it's on Amazon and all good bookshops
And
and
all
sort
good
of
bookshops
books,
and
yeah,
around
and
the
all
clubs
that
as well.
usual stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent, brilliant, thank you. And I'll throw this at you, and I know I've not prepped you for this question, Andy, but I always ask people when I meet them, especially if they come out from outside of my what I will call my normal network. Um, so we're all, well, most of us are readers, or we go to conferences. And is there a book or something that you've sort of picked up and over the last 6-12 months that's particularly pressed a button with you that you could share with us?
I read on about a book a week on average.
Oh, blimey! So it's a good
Good,
selection to go from.
Goodreads is a good one to follow me on. The book that's had the biggest impact on me in the last, and actually it's in the last few weeks, it's this year, is a book called Deep Work.
Ooh,
I can't tell you the author off the top of my head, but Deep Work, and the premise of the book is the highest achievers have done so by working without distraction. And so it's lots of ideas and practical ways to work without distraction. So what I do now, you can't see behind my computer, but in front of me, I've got 2 whiteboards based on, the ideas I've come up with from working without distraction. And I've got a year planner with colored stickers. And my PA will put 90-minute deep work sessions into my diary as often as she can through the week. And I will either be writing, or I'll be selling, or I will be strategizing. It will be based on one of the core things I'm trying to really move forward. Friday, I wrote a brand new content plan, a whole social media content plan, which could have been on a to-do list for 3 years.
mm,
Because of deep work, I've got a 90-minute session. I'm just going to focus on it. And what happens is my phone goes into airplane mode. My computer goes, the wireless gets switched off. My music gets turned off. My door gets closed. I stick a timer on my phone, a countdown timer for 90 minutes, and I work on that, whatever that project is, for 90 minutes. And it has really driven me forward phenomenally. So it's not the most readable of books. There are some phenomenal readable books. I always recommend Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath as a little
yep.
bonus. Fantastic book. It's not the most readable, but for impact on my business, and it's one of the most recent I've read, I've implemented more from that book than I think any other book I've ever read.
It's fantastic. And I think you're about the 3rd or 4th person that's recommended that book to me now, Andy. So it's got
Which
to,
one? Deep Work.
I've not read it.
Yeah.
It's on my list, but I think it needs elevating up my list. That's fantastic. So I'm conscious we're now 3 minutes over what I promised. So anybody that's watching wants to find out more about Andy and the work you do, what's the best way about going about that, Andy?
The beauty of having an awkward surname like mine is you're easy to find. So I'm on all the normal social channels, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta. My website is lopata.co.uk, Lopata, but I'm sure you've got that on the Facebook group.
Yeah.
If you go to the website, you click on Insights, you've got blogs, videos, podcasts, and so on there. And you can also subscribe to a 3 weekly newsletter. I don't try and sort of overburden you, but once every 3 weeks you get, at the moment I'm doing the A to Z of mentoring, masterminding, and asking for help.
Okay.
having previously done the A to Z of networking, and that's crowdsourced. So I go onto all the channels when I'm writing the next letter, and I say, what? So the next one will be, what are your mentoring, masterminding, asking for help D's, and I crowdsource it. There's normally something that's been happening, a mini blog or something like that. There's a video tip and there's a bit of fun, and then I'll talk about books I've read or events that are coming up, things like that that are useful and practical.
Excellent. So if they search for you, Andy, and it's Lopata,
Right.
is the spelling of Lopata. That's brilliant. As I say, I know we're over time, and your time is precious, just the same as everybody else's. So I'm delighted that you're coming along, and I can't wait to get all of the guts and everything, and even more actions, no doubt, off the back of the conversation on the 25th of March. If there's anybody who's watching that would like to come along and experience the full mastermind, we're beginning the evening on the 24th and then go through to 3:30 on the 25th. Get in touch. If you're not already connected with me on LinkedIn and all the other social medias, you will have had reminders today for the webinar. Just reply to one of those reminders and it will come through to me. That's brilliant. So thank you very much again, Andy, for sharing and spending the time for us. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. I've not had any questions at all today on the way through, so we must have been very clear in the explanations that we provided, Andy. So that's great.
If anyone has got further questions and they're not coming on the 24th, 25th, then maybe feed through you. I'm more than happy to pick up
share.
on it. Maybe record a short video if there are a few.
Excellent. That's brilliant. So thank you very much, and goodbye for now.
Pleasure. Thank you.